Joe, the Europa League, it needs a rebrand because guess what? The Europa League is fun. We need to embrace the fun. 2 days away from another Europa League match day. I'm excited. Let's happy hour.
Yeah, hello and welcome back to this episode of the United Happy Hour. The only place you'll probably see more mistakes than the current Liverpool back five. But I went there, didn't I? I did it. That'll all come back to backfire on me next season, Paul. I'm sure when Virgil van Dijk's back, and they no doubt go and sign a quality centre back in the summer as well. First of all, Paulie, obviously, like I said last Tuesday, UEFA haven't got to grips with the fact that United Happy Hour goes out at 6 o'clock on a Thursday. Well, it goes out at 5 on a Thursday, but we're recording at 6 o'clock. So therefore, we didn't do a show on Thursday. But obviously, United had a very positive result. Another positive result on Sunday, but kind of a marked difference in terms of performance. What have you made of the last two games in general, mate?
Job done.
Yeah,
simple as that. Stronger side than I expected in the Europa League, but the message was clear: go out there, win. Let's not leave this for. Let's not get that KG 1-1 draw and come away and have to go and beat them at Old Trafford. Let's just go out there and win, and then we can come out and now put out the just don't lose 4-0 11, which allows everybody to get a nice little break. You hope. All of that is with the caveat of that assumes Bruno Fernandez and Marcus Rashford are not on the pitch on Thursday,
Well, it's funny you say this, Paulie, because, there's been a couple of times now, and I know that you never take Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's word as gospel in press conferences and interviews. I think we've learnt that by now over the couple of years he's been in charge, but he has hinted that it won't necessarily be a very weakened team against Sociedad. I think he is keen to keep it pretty strong and, try and build some momentum. I mean, let's not forget, before the Sociedad game, we had been in a sticky run of form. I think before the Newcastle game, the stats may say we'd only lost 1 in 6, but there was a 3 draws in there. I think that obviously that were poor draws, to be honest, especially the Everton and West Brom one. So it's interesting the fact that this argument that he might go strong again on Thursday, Paulie, well, strongish, in the sense of, trying to keep that momentum going in, because obviously the United's next 3 league games look very tricky on paper.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is there's a limit to how not strong you can get. He's not going to throw kids out there because Real Sociedad are good. They can, and 2 quick goals, that becomes a dicey KG affair, right? If 15 minutes into the match, it's 2-0, now you're in trouble. So you can't just throw the kids out there. They'll play. And Ethan Galbraith has been added to the squad, and people are, we're going to give. Yeah, he might come off the bench. I wouldn't be shocked, but I wouldn't bank on it either. He'll be in the squad. He might come off the bench. So if Ethan Galbraith isn't playing, what can you do in midfield? If McTominay is still hurt, you can only go with Fred and Matic unless Donny van de Beek comes back. And if Donny van de Beek comes back and plays deeper, then you won't. One of the stronger players is going to have to play up front. Ideally, you'd have Van de Beek in there. I would frankly, I would start Anthony Martial, but not so much because solely if Cavani is fit, then I would definitely start Martial and basically be like, this is you now.
Yeah.
Until you start performing, you're the Europa League guy, and Cavani's going to be my Premier League guy because your performances have not been up to snuff. So for that reason, I would start Anthony Martial. He already said Ahmad's not going to start. And again, you don't want to put pressure on these guys. If something happens, you don't want to be down 2-0 right away. If you go out there and you play a relatively strong, but not your strongest side, I don't imagine Rashford and Bruno starting. I'd imagine him trying not to play them. And if you play, and it's ugly and whatever, but you're up 1-2-0, 60 minutes into the game, 55 minutes into the game, then you could bring on everybody because then you got to get 6 goals. Now it's just about seeing it out. But he's not taking anything lightly, because you don't want to lose 2-0 and go to the next, you don't want to lose and go to the next round. I understand the name of the game is just go to the next round. And I'm not saying that this is how I would approach it. Maybe I would play the just don't lose 4-0 11. But as a manager, you can understand the thought process when he's sitting there being like, I don't want my team thinking, oh, this is just a walkthrough game. It's you need to take every match seriously.
Yeah, and look, guys who are in the comments, if you're watching on Periscope, jump over to YouTube. Do get involved in the conversation. People who are watching the show right now, why not tell us what you think Ollie may do, or what you would do for the game on Thursday? Paulie, you said about Ethan Galbraith there being called up into the Europa squad, onto the B list or something. It's interesting that, obviously Ollie's already been asked that he doesn't think both young players in terms of Ahmad and Shola Shortier will start the game, but you would think that maybe one of them will start and maybe the other one will come on for them later on in the game, like you say, when it's a bit more secure. You'd like to see one of those young lads get a start, wouldn't you, in a game like this?
Yeah, I'd love to see Ahmad start. Guy lit it up for 9 minutes when he was on the pitch. Showed us a lot. But Solskjaer did say he's not going to. I believe he said after the match on Sunday he's not going to start on Thursday. And that's fine. They're breeding him in slowly. It's hard to complain about this because this is how Solskjaer's always operated, and it's worked very well with young players. He didn't just throw Mason Greenwood out there. He was very reserved about it. So, give him 30 minutes or something. I'd much rather him play 30 minutes, tear it up, and have Solskjaer be like, he can come off the bench against Chelsea if we need him, than have him play 90 minutes and Solskjaer basically being like, he's only played 90 minutes plus 9 minutes plus 20 minutes since September. We need to give him more recovery time, and he's not going to be ready for Sunday. So this is why they call it a manager. He's got to manage all of this. It's difficult. I don't really see either of them starting. Again, though, if this game is in hand, I see them all playing.
Yeah, I agree. But look, it's difficult because, like you said before, you put Martial in there, Paulie, not because you feel like he deserved his place in the first team at the moment, but you just feel something may click. But having said that, I'm even losing hope on that now because
I don't even think it's a may click thing. I think it's remember when Fergie used to, for those League Cup games against lower level sides, when it was, you'd get the reserves in there. Ji-Sung Park would get his run out, and Johnny Evans was definitely going to feature, and Wayne Rooney wouldn't even be on the bench or anything. And then every so often it would be, Rooney is on the bench or Ferdinand's on the bench, and it was always Ferguson was punishing them and basically being like, you're not getting the night off because you haven't been performing recently. It was always a punishment, and that's why I would start. I would start Martial in this game and basically be like, this is your last year's Odion Ighalo. You're the guy that's going to come in the Europa League and eat the minutes so that Edinson Cavani doesn't have to, because that's where you are right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. Paulie, the interesting one for me is as all of a sudden become Dan James, because Dan James is somebody that you'd have thought would be a shoo-in for this game, as he was probably the first game. But you look at his current form over the last 2 games. I don't want to get too carried away, but to be fair to the lad, he can only beat what's in front of him, and he can only play as well as he has done in those 2 games. Does he become, because of the form in the last couple of games, does he become a player now to Solskjaer that he might be thinking, actually, you might be better, more utilised on Sunday against Chelsea, and obviously that then plays a part in selection, doesn't it? Because I think if, let's say, Dan James he could have scored his goal against Sociedad and he could have had a decent night against Newcastle, he would have definitely started on Thursday. But he's actually been very good, to the point at which he's been one of our better players in both of the last 2 games. Does Solskjaer now look at it and think, well, actually, I might want you against Chelsea?
For sure. Because he is now emerging as the new temporary right wing option that we have. He hasn't been consistent enough to do this, to really nail it down. But I'm happy for him because Dan James was a great player last season, and he was never supposed to play as much as he did. He got off to a hot start, and all of a sudden we raised our expectations. He helped keep us afloat when the team was not doing too well. 3 goals, 6 assists before January doesn't happen by accident. And then he ran into a wall because, again, he wasn't supposed to play this often. So the fans kind of turned on him, and there's been this virtual that I don't get. And I like the fact that he's now settling in on that right side, because that's where his best position is, I think, or certainly his future. He came to us the season before he had played in the championship. He played on the left side. The season before that, he played on the right side. And on the left side, he was a cut inside and shoot guy. On the right side, he was more creative, but he hasn't been that effective for us on the left. The fact that he scored against Sociedad from the right, that he scored against who did we play on Sunday? Newcastle from the right. And that these were good right wing goals. It wasn't like, oh, he popped up on the left and scored. It was he was on the right and he shot, he beat the goalkeeper short side. That was really positive things to see, because he does a lot of the other things. Yes, his final ball needs a lot of work. But his energy is exceptional. His nobody helps out Wan-Bissaka the way that Dan James does. And Chelsea they're now a heavy possession team. If you want to, they play with wingbacks. You want to exploit that space. Dan James is a great option to do that. Part of me would say he can play Thursday and Sunday because he hasn't played all year. He's fresh, but you remember even last year, he didn't play in the Europa League. He was one of those guys that Solskjaer just wouldn't play in the Europa League because he was like, I can't give you too much too soon, and I need you for the league games.
Yeah. No, I agree. And Pauly, the thing for me is there was a lot of raised eyebrows about his selection against Newcastle. And I think the reason for that was a couple of things, really. One, because it's Dan James and people don't really see him as a regular first team starter. But also, Pauly, I think people just expected Newcastle to play a low block in that game. They have done for the majority of this season. And strangely enough, I was really impressed with Newcastle's attitude early on. I thought first half an hour, but in a way that sort of helped Dan James settle into the game, because it did give him more space than he was probably hoping to have. And I said to people who were raising the eyebrows, said, well, let's not make too many judgments yet, because this is a good opportunity now to see if Dan James has added something to his game. Because we all know that if Dan James does want to play in this side regularly, he has to be more than a player that is only good against playing against teams who are going to counter-attack. Because as United get better and better, Paulie, they're going to come across more and more teams, even good teams, who play more of a low block against them. So he has to develop something to his game. And to be fair to him, when you look at his performance and you look at his goal he scored against Newcastle, I think he's shown that he has added a little something to his game. I can't necessarily tell you what it is, but he looks more now than a player that's just going to run in behind all the time, which is what he looked early doors.
Yeah, it was really good. He scored 4 goals now and 1 assist in his last essentially 6 appearances. He played 4 minutes against Aston Villa. We're not going to count that. 4 in his last 6. That's pretty good. In the Champions League, in the Premier League, in the Europa League. What was good about Sunday was last year he would disappear. Rashford would disappear when we played these low blocks. And part of that is you're on the wings and these guys need space to run in behind, and they weren't getting it. And they'd hold their width, or maybe they wouldn't hold their width. But if they held their width to give space in the middle for people to operate, well, you're operating with McTominay, Fred, Andreas Pereira, or Jesse Lingard. That's not going to do it. And it was a disaster. So you go back to last season where against Watford, we had, Aaron Wan-Bissaka had a great game coming up the field a week beforehand. Mason Greenwood was playing and he was trying to get inside. Dan James was coming inside, and it was the whole first half was disjointed. And Solskjaer at halftime basically said, "Hey, you guys, put your boots on the chalk line and don't move it." And they hugged that touchline, and that left Bruno Fernandez all the room in the world, and he dominated that second half of the game. And they basically set out to do that against Newcastle this week. Only Newcastle said, "No, we're just going to cut Bruno off." And now you got to get it wide. And you saw United's their progression pattern was get it wide and let the wings carry the ball forward. Rashford and James are the most progressive carriers in the game. And they were rewarded because they ran up defenders and they both scored goals. That's something you like to see.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, to be fair, Paulie, look, Ollie touched on it himself in his post-match interview. He just pushed a couple of players further forward. Probably Matic, weirdly enough, sort of played sort of 10, 20. Well, it looked like he was playing 10, 20 yards further forward in that second half, and obviously was involved in the goals. I'm going to move on to what's on social media in a sec, Paulie, but I just want to ask this question first in case we don't get time for it at the end. I know it's totally off topic, but are you surprised by Lingard's early success at West Ham? I just want to say I'm not, because every time I've seen Jesse Lingard go out on a loan, I think most notably Birmingham, but he's also had successful loans at Brighton and Sheffield Wednesday. Every time I've seen him at those clubs, I've always been left thinking this boy's ready for a run in the first team. And I'm not going to say it after this West Ham loan because, we've had too much evidence now to suggest that, that ship's probably sailed. I just think he's one of those players that the Man United shirt weighs heavily on. There's a couple like that as well, Paulie. But what I will say is, and I've said it before, is I am absolutely delighted to see him doing well, and I'm sure you echo those thoughts yourself, Paulie.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. His best season at United was the year that we actually had people that were firing. Lukaku, Martial, Rashford, and then the second half of the season, everybody was terrible. He's had a rough time the past couple of years, but he's coming now into a situation where there's not a lot of pressure on him. It's just do what you can do. And when we've given him chance, look, we gave him a lot of chance at the beginning of last season, and he didn't do himself any favors. He could have scored 30 seconds into that Everton match, and he shot wide from the 6-yard box. He missed a bad sitter against Watford. But in the second half of the season, he played against Leicester, scored a goal. Then he played against Lask and scored a goal. And then we didn't give him a chance again. And when we did give him chances this year, it was in the League Cup where you're not playing with any of the good players. And we also played him off to the left, which has never been his position. He's been, like a grindy / attacking midfielder out there.
Yeah.
He played as a dual 8 in the World Cup where he was fantastic.
His biggest strength for me, Paulie, was always he seemed very good at sort of finding space in between the lines.
Yes. I think it's just his first touch is terrible. Yeah. So it negates the space he finds.
Yeah, somebody who does that, you want them to be good at receiving the ball on the half turn. Like you say, you want them to have a good first touch, and that's what lets him down, isn't it?
And the other time he played really well was on the right of that front three where they were interchanging all the time, and he was just doing the dirty work to really open up space for Rashford. So you take him out of this. So now we're playing him as the left. And last year when we played, we're also playing him as the 10 and basically being like, we're running everything through you. And you don't want to run everything through Jesse Lingard. No. So now he's going into a situation. There's a lot less pressure. He's got a manager that's worked with him before in that David Moyes probably took one look at him in training and said, okay, cool, go on, lad. Because they really weren't here at the same time.
He probably feels a bit bigger in that team as well, Paulie, because he is a bigger name than some of them. He is probably a better player.
He started a band already. He's got the whole team having fun. Nobody's complaining that he's dancing. Like, this is a great situation for him.
See, as fans, we might take it for granted, but what you've got to look at, Paulie, is West Ham players will be looking at him and saying, whatever he's done at Manchester United, this is a Manchester United player coming into our dressing room.
This is the guy who has scored the winning goal in the FA Cup. The FA Cup final. He has scored a goal in the World Cup. Like this, say what you want about him, but he has experience.
Yeah, exactly. And they shape up to that. Anyway, Paulie, like I promised, let's get on to our main feature of the show, and that's always what's on social media. I did tell you, Paulie, this was the place to come if you wanted to see mistakes like you see over at Anfield. Anyway, moving on. What's on social media, Paulie? And I've got to be honest with you, this is dominated, especially today. It's been dominating now for a week. I think the debate has really sort of come to the fore. Well, it's probably been there all season, to be fair, but it's come to the fore, Paulie, I think, since the Everton game, the 3-3 and the nature of the last-minute result, the last-minute draw. And you've got Samuel Luckhurst here, who obviously covers Manchester United for the MEN, and he's suggested that Dean Henderson will look to leave United if he's not assured the number one role next season. Premier League clubs are interested, but figures at United suggest that they would probably be better looking to sell David De Gea, and also not just the figures, Paulie. I would imagine the profile of the player, the age of the player. You know, you're looking at a much younger goalkeeper here, but this is starting to get, Paulie, the way I thought it might get at the start of the season. Everybody seemed quite excited about the fact that United had got two very good goalkeepers, and you know they were going to compete and they were going to raise standards and everything like this, blah blah blah. But I did see something like a little bit of unrest starting. I don't know. Obviously, we have to caveat this with it's a newspaper article. But I knowing Dean Henderson, like I know Dean Henderson, I actually privy to some information that some other loans that he's had in the past as well. He's not the type of guy to accept just being sat on the bench, and he's certainly not the type of guy, Paulie, to keep quiet about it. He will be voicing a bit, especially when he sees his competition making mistakes. So, look, this is a really interesting situation, Paulie. I just want to say quickly, I had a chat with a good friend, well, my best friend, Ben. He watches the show every week, so shout out to Ben. And you know, there was a feeling between both of us, Paulie, that you know both goalkeepers might have to go. I mean, I don't know what you think, but this is a really complex situation for United.
Yeah. First of all, Dean Henderson needs to shut up, because what did you expect? What did you expect? David De Gea just signed a very lucrative contract last season, and he then didn't have a great season. So I can understand you sitting there and going, that position is there for the taking. But you also had to know that it was David's position to lose, and Solskjaer was going to give him every chance to win that position. You look at what happened last year, Pereira, Lingard, he never gave, he gave them every possible chance to lose their spot. So, and David De Gea has played better this year. He's not playing well, unfortunately, but he's been better. So United have to make a decision here, because as Alan says, De Gea and Henderson remind me of NFL QBs. Two number ones don't work, but I don't. All right, so what the second part of this contract, I don't see how they could sell De Gea because of his ridiculous contract. That is the crux of the matter here. That's what we're going to discuss. You can ask what they should do. You're muted, Joe, so nobody could hear you.
I'm always muted. I just want to say, Phil, this is what you want to talk about, because it's not about what they should do, it's what they can do, isn't it?
Right. It's what can you do here? The economics of this situation are very difficult, because no one in their right mind is buying David De Gea. Who's going to do it? PSG have a goalkeeper. Nobody in the Premier League is buying David De Gea. Real Madrid, they're set. Barcelona have no money. Most teams don't even have money. So David De Gea is not he worked hard to get the wages that he got. And the way football works, unfortunately, is often you get paid for what you did, not what you're going to do. So he's finally got the wages that he very much earned, because he was the best goalkeeper in the world just a few short years ago. He earned this contract. He's just now not living up to it, which is a problem. Yeah. Dean Henderson, you couldn't have expected more opportunities than you've gotten. Solskjaer hasn't handled the situation as well as he could have. Having said that, I don't see how he hasn't handled it well. I don't see how he could have really handled it better. I thought, you couldn't really give Henderson a run of games in the league and let De Gea sit on the bench for 2 weeks, especially because his play wasn't so bad that it was dictating that. It's been a little bit worse recently. And maybe the one opportunity around the festive period where you could have gotten Henderson another game or two, well, you gave him a game against Sheffield United and he was terrible. So he didn't, if Solskjaer had plans to start him maybe against Wolves or against Villa, he kind of blew that. But it all comes back to the economics of this. You're more likely to be able to sell Dean Henderson. And and we're going to see the same situation now with Anthony Martial, who's been terrible this year. And yes, United want another striker, but they've always wanted another striker. They went after Erling Haaland last year. What do you do? What kind of decision do you make? Is if if you say Dean Henderson's our number one, David De Gea is not going to leave. And now you've got a goalkeeper making $375K a week on the bench, just sitting there, which is fine. All right. If he's not going to behave, you just say, we're going to drop you, and you put Lee Grant on the bench, or you put somebody else there. That's fine. But that's still money that you need to pay him. And that is money that could be going elsewhere, but can't. It's tied up in David De Gea.
Yeah.
So, and now if Dean Henderson gets hurt, what do you do? Then you got to be like, hey, you got to call David De Gea out of the wilderness. So that makes it a difficult decision. Or you're probably best off selling Dean Henderson, because you could actually get money for him, and you hope David De Gea turns it around, or you use the money to actually improve the rest of your squad. And then there's less pressure on De Gea. Novel concept of, hey, let's just don't start fires, and then we don't need the firefighters.
Look, Pauly, just while you have a little break there, I just want to say to everyone watching, look, let us know, guys, what you think. Who would be your number one right now? Because I still think Ollie is. I think, looking at Ollie, Pauly, I think he wants to make Dean the number one. I just think he's waiting for an obvious, glaring opportunity to do it. And
De Gea hasn't had any screw ups at the level that he had last season.
Exactly. We haven't had any Watford goals. The Watford one, I think, last season, where it's just a tame shot. And I think it was Tottenham as well. It was someone who shot from distance. Was it Tottenham?
Chelsea in the FA Cup, FA Cup.
Yeah. So
Chelsea the year beforehand, where he just spilled it for Marcos Alonso. Yeah. He hasn't had any of those this year.
No,
and the worst error we've had from a goalkeeper came from Dean Henderson.
Yeah. And this is my worry, Paulie, because my concern is I don't look at Dean Henderson and thinking, if he gets in here, he'll nail down this spot, because I haven't seen enough to suggest that, Paulie. And I think Ollie will be in the same place. I wish in these League Cup games and Europa League games and even Champions, I wish he'd been flawless, Paulie, but he hasn't. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. My biggest issue with the two goalkeepers is they seem to have the exact same weaknesses, Paulie. They mirror their weaknesses. I don't think you can level criticism at Dave for his kicking sometimes. I think Dean Henderson's weak kicking. People have a go at Dave for his commanding of his box. I don't think Dean Henderson, contrary to what a lot of people say, is brilliant at commanding.
He against Sociedad, he showed command of that box. But that was remember people used to tout Romero's stats last year, and it was like, cool, you're keeping clean sheets against Bruges and Lask and Burton Albion. There's a difference between doing that and doing it in the Premier League. So he did that. But when he's played in the league, we've still been susceptible to free kicks. We have still conceded. He's played 2.5 games, and we've conceded 2 goals from corners. So we're just as susceptible on these free kicks. It's not necessarily a goalkeeper thing. It makes the situation very difficult. And I understand if you're Dean Henderson, I understand you don't want to sit on the bench, but again, you went to Man United, like you expected to just walk into the team, like get out of here. And they are giving you chances. De Gea is doing just enough to make it a difficult decision whether to sit him. He should be doing more, but he's now slipped a bit. In the first half of the season, he was doing more than enough to be like, look, you stay on the bench, young lad. Now it's a conversation. But again, it comes down to, how do you move on from this? And let me just answer a few questions first. From Lokish, what are the odds of De Gea getting his pre-World Cup form back? I think they're slim, and I think it's not De Gea's fault. I think teams have just recognized where David De Gea's strengths are and what his weaknesses are. He's an excellent shot stopper. He's excellent stopping those long-range shots. They don't take those anymore. If you hound him with crosses and get physical on him, he's very weak, and that's where teams are attacking him, and the weakness is coming out. So it's hard for him to get to his form back when teams aren't making him stand on his head anymore. They're making him hold his ground and get muscular. And from Alan, on the De Gea contract, is this another example of United needing a director of football? It seemed too much money at the time, given his form the past 18 months? That's a difficult question because they had been trying this. This comes back to Alexis Sanchez. It always comes back to Alexis Sanchez. They gave him this huge deal. And De Gea was the best player in the team, the best goalkeeper in the world when that season that Sanchez came in, and that whole season. And it was why is he making way more money? He's doing nothing, and I am keeping this team afloat. The only reason we qualified for the Champions League is because of me. And that's basically what his team went to the United board with and said, these are the terms. Should they have given him his contract? Well, he then had a less good year, still good. It's really important to remember that the following season, he was good. He just wasn't historically good. And he wasn't as good as the standards he had set, but he was good.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe that's a down year. That's what his representatives, maybe that's a down year, and next year he'll come back up. But you also can't bank on Dean Henderson stepping in to replace him. How many goalkeepers have United brought through their academy that, when was the last time we had an academy goalkeeper who's been our number one? We tried it with Ben Foster. He wasn't up to snuff. And that's basically the last.
We bought him from Stoke City as well, Paul. You can't really call him an academy product really.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. But he's the only one that got like a decent run in the team. And at this point, Henderson, when they gave him this contract, Henderson had a good run at Sheffield United in the Championship, not in the Premier League. You cannot bank on your academy goalkeeper coming in and replacing a guy who was world-class for 5 years. So on the other hand, that last line from Alan, no one else was going to pay him that much, but is that a risk? He also did deserve that contract. He was, if we never signed Alexis Sanchez, we could have signed him for less money. The Alexis Sanchez deal is what ruined it.
Ironically though, Paulie, now though, I think as well, Dave is sort of hindering business for United moving forward, because United are trying to tell everybody that they're looking to buy that their wage structure now is around about 250k a week after tax. That everyone knows David De Gea is sitting there on a £370,000 contract. So you can say obviously that Dave, Alexis obviously made Dave think like that, but now Dave's probably making all the potential signings, especially when you're linked with the names like David Alaba and Sergio Ramos.
Yeah, and United are playing the game right. See, here's the thing: United, they could start playing the game right. They're so reactive to the whims of whatever someone says. So they could start playing the game right. Look, the number one thing you don't want to do, which is what they did last year, is get on the top of a hill and scream, "We got money." Because then when you call somebody up and say, "We want that player," they go, "Well, you got money, so we want that money." Because we don't got any. So they're now trying to say, "Oh, a pandemic is hitting us hard. We can't spend crazy." They toned it down. They threatened to walk away. They're threatening to walk away from Sancho again. Oh, because Mason Greenwood had a good game. Yeah, that's BS. But what they're trying to establish is, we can't just go out and freely spend. And then as soon as they do that, which is good, that was a good thing to do. But as soon as they do that, somebody else is calling up reporters and being like, "Have you seen the reaction on social media? People are killing us. They're saying, oh, it's the owners. They're trying to let it out there that we still have the money for Sancho. Get it out." And it's just, they can't get out of their own way. But this is where, look, this is a question from Joseph, and it's a great one. Swap deals will be huge this summer. Could De Gea be used in a swap? And with who? People love to say this. No.
I thought that last summer, I thought swap deals were going to be massive last summer, but there wasn't a lot really, in truth, especially not over in the UK. So it'd be interesting to see whether teams utilise it more this summer.
They won't. Because here's what everybody thinks about a swap deal. From what I gather, everybody kind of thinks that they work like trades in America, where two teams just call up and we trade players, and that's it. It doesn't work like that, because the players do have a say in this. The players need to negotiate new contracts. So, first of all, swap deals don't exist anymore because they're all just bookkeeping. So basically, if you do a swap deal, it'll be De Gea will be listed as a transfer for $100 million, so that we can report that we brought, even though no money changes hands, and then De Gea then goes to so who wants David De Gea, and who's willing to give him those wages? If let's say Napoli come calling and they offer us a player, they say we'll take David De Gea. If they can only offer De Gea 110,000 a week, De Gea's gonna be like, I'm not doing that. And
exactly, I think,
and then the deal doesn't happen.
It's what I think when you do a swap deal, Paulie, it's not as easy as thinking this player's valued 20 million, this player's valued 20 million. Just swap them over, because, like you said, they've got their individual contracts, Paulie, and those contracts cost, is an outlay to a club over X amount of years, sometimes paid up front, sometimes paid over X amount of years. It's so difficult. And the other issue with the swap deal is, Paulie, is Manchester United might value De Gea at, say, 60 million, and United might think that Juventus have a player that's worth 60 million, but to Juventus that player is worth 80 million. So there's not a swap to be had there. A player is only valued as much as the club that owns him. Obviously, everybody's got an opinion on how much a player is worth. You know what I mean? So
yeah, and the other thing that in America, these swaps don't happen too often anymore either. You don't see, you just muted yourself, Joe. I don't know if you knew that, but you don't see big name for big name trades anymore. You see these trades where the make weight is, oh, we gave you a player who everybody knows is not as good as this guy, but then we gave you 2 prospects, so 2 young guys who might be as good as him one day, and we gave you a ton of draft picks who, so you could draft your own guys. Swap deals, everybody always suggests, oh, we want Declan Rice, 50 million and Jesse Lingard. Okay, you're offering that because you don't want Jesse Lingard anymore. West Ham are going to go, we'll give you Declan Rice, but, we're looking for a forward, and we value him right up there with Marcus Rashford. So if you want Declan Rice, we need Marcus Rashford in return. It's like, no, we like Rashford.
Yeah.
So that's why these things don't work, is because the only reason remember, Real Madrid tried to get Pogba with 30 million plus James Rodriguez plus somebody else that they were just trying to clear their wages off the book. And you're like, no, we don't want your dead weight. We want actual players that we want. So there needs to be so many things that work in your favor. I mean, the one that really worked it didn't work for either team, but Alexis for Mkhitaryan was basically Arsenal were like, Alexis is leaving no matter what. And United were like, well, take Mkhitaryan, who actually started out that season very well. And it was like, for them, it was he's better than nothing. And maybe he just needs a change of scenery. Maybe it was Mourinho. He was a year and a half removed from having like a 20 assist season in the Bundesliga. And it didn't work. But that's the reality of swap deals. And it's just like, if United wanted to,
it's just like a club approaching a player for a player just in an individual deal. When was the last time a club went to a team and to another club and said, right, I want this player, I'm going to give you 30 million, and the other club said, done, deal. There's always there's always a difference in evaluation of a player, whether you're just wanting to buy a player without a swap deal involved, or if you want a swap deal. Everybody's got a different valuation on a player. Now, I want to ask you about this, Paulie, because I know you've been an advocate of obviously letting contracts run out. So, like I just said here, does it mean that David De Gea is going to see out his contract, even if there isn't any visible improvement in his game? And I just want to say, Paulie, before you talk about this, if United do that with the length of time that's left on David De Gea's contract, they will have to sell Dean Henderson, because there is no way Dean Henderson is going to stay at this. I believe it because I know a little bit of the character and I know some previous stories. I believe it when these articles say that Dean is getting impatient and Dean will want to be first team next season. So this is not a decision for me that United can kick down the road, Paulie. A lot of people have suggested he may be going out on loan again next season. He isn't even going to tolerate that, Paulie. He's one of the best paid goalkeepers in the world, behind obviously David De Gea. He's not on anywhere near as much as David De Gea, but he's still one of the best paid goalkeepers in the world. He is not going to want to do another loan deal. So United have to deal with this situation now. Well, by now, I mean in the summer, obviously.
Yeah. He's going to see out his contract, because where's he going to go? So who's taking him is at a certain point, if De Gea sits on the bench for 2 years, and but the Spanish situation, is already, he's lost his place. But then again, it's like Kepa, and Kepa doesn't, Spain doesn't have a bona fide number one, so he does need to be playing. But again, who is going to take him? He's not going to one of the top teams. So it ties into is like Alan is saying, is a De Gea swap deal would be like a salary dump trade, which is essentially every transfer, especially when you're getting rid of deadweight. It's a salary dump. But at a certain point, United are going to, the only way to move De Gea on is United are going to have to take almost no fee. And then it's okay. So is it, it's going to be like the only club that would take a chance with it. Look, Real Madrid aren't, Barcelona aren't, none of the Premier League teams aren't, Bayern Munich aren't, Dortmund aren't, PSG aren't. It's going to be a club like Napoli or it won't be one of the German ones, somebody who's willing to take on an older, maybe Inter Milan. They seem to love taking United players. Yeah. So
what if you could go back to Atletico? If our Black does decide to move on, Paulie, I wonder if Atletico back home to there is an option.
That's the only one. But I don't think they'd give him the wages he wants. So then it becomes a question, and then and then it would basically be like Alexis. It'd be like United would be paying De Gea to leave. So that 375K, you're paying 150 of that or something, but that's still 150 K a week that is just sitting, burning a hole in your wage book. So yeah, I could see the Atletico Madrid one happening. If Oblak leaves, but maybe United might say, oh, they're not willing to pay enough. And then it becomes this issue of we have 25 million to spare. And, we have to split that between the player and the fee. And De Gea's representatives are basically like, well, if you knock 5 million off the fee, you could give that 5 million to us. And that becomes a whole to do. They're going to have to sell Dean Henderson. If someone came calling for Dean Henderson this season, I'd sell him. If they gave you a good price, I'd sell him. And I do that with basically anybody in the squad. First of all, Dean Henderson is completely unproven. So if you're going to get money for him, great. We don't know if he's going to be any better. Not to say that De Gea is proven, because he was proven, and now he is proven to be inconsistent. So, but there's only one unsellable player in the squad, and that is Bruno Fernandez. Anybody else? The number one rule in football: if anyone offers you more money than you think a player is worth, you sell them. And if someone came up to us and offered us 150 million or 200 million for Marcus Rashford, goodbye, Marcus. If someone offered 250 million for Mason Greenwood, good luck. I love you, but we could use that 250 million, and we could get much better with that. So that's the ultimate rule. The only player that if you take out of the team right now that we are screwed is Bruno Fernandez. Is probably the only untouchable player. Yeah. So if somebody came calling for Dean Henderson, yeah, we'll sell Dean Henderson. I think you can. I don't think David De Gea is our issue right now.
No, I think what Ollie is crying out for, though, Paulie, I think he would love one of them just to step up and just show something in a run of games that just suggests that, look, I'm back if it's Dave, or I'm the one if it's Dean Henderson, just to make their life a bit easier and a bit simpler. Because, look, we've spent, I can't remember the time we started talking about this point, but I feel like we've been talking for this quite a while now, and we're stewing over it, and I would imagine that they're having exactly the same thoughts in the boardroom, coaching staff.
I think he's just waiting for De Gea to make like a colossal error, and it's not happening. And
but then you don't want that, because that's going to cost you. That can cost you points. It could even cost you a place in the top four. It could cost you anything.
Right, but now you can't. Look, now we're in that same situation where can you play Dean Henderson against Sociedad, and then in the league, and then against in the next Europa League fixture, and it's 3 in a row, so that's a good run. But that means De Gea is not playing for 2 weeks or 4. He's not going to go to Dean Henderson against Chelsea here, and then you have this situation now where you're evaluating Dean Henderson based on performances against Luton Town and Brighton's B team and Watford and Real Sociedad and Istanbul. teams that are just not of the quality that you're going to be facing in the Premier League. And, you know, when he played Sheffield United, he didn't do too well. He did well against West Ham. He did well against Southampton. He didn't have much to do against Everton in the League Cup. He didn't do well against Manchester City. So it's been up and down, but it's very hard for even if, unless United just get played off the park in a game and win 1-0 in a Europa League game and win 1-0 because Dean Henderson stood on his head, it's very hard to evaluate him.
Yeah, and the big problem for you, but we will move on after this and talk about somebody else who we might have similar issues with. But my biggest issue with Davies is, well, I think you touched on it before, Paulie, he's not the kind of character goalkeeper, I don't think, that you can sort of say that you're sort of dropped, put him in the wilderness for a couple of weeks to a month, and then if Dean doesn't do too well, ask him to come back and expect him to be on top form. I feel like he will be affected by the fact that he's been dropped, if in inverted commas, and he doesn't strike me as having that strength of character that he can come back from it from, Paulie, and that in a funny sort of way segues me into the next person that we want to talk about, and that is Anthony Martial, because in terms of what you would like to do and what you can do with this player, maybe as this season's developing, it is sort of coming round in sort of discussion regarding Anthony, because look, his form's been really worrying, Paulie. I think I touched on it earlier when we were talking about selection, and we were looking at Anthony and saying, do you put him in so hopefully something clicks? But then, to be fair, there's been a couple of games I can think of this season where he's got a couple of goals and you think, something might click. I think the most recent one was Southampton. He scored 2 good goals in that. He probably could have scored a hat-trick, maybe even a couple more. But he got his couple of goals and you're thinking, right, that might do his confidence some good now. Let's see if he can kick on. But his form is really, really worrying, Paulie. And there is talk gathering that United might want to look to cash in on him this summer. But again, it's a lot easier said than done, isn't it? And first of all, though, Paulie, what's your thoughts on Martial and what United should do with him?
He's not performing right now, and it's hard but it's hard to say, we're going to go back out there next year with Cavani and Martial as your guy. Because look, Erling Haaland's not leaving Dortmund this summer. If you want to, you have to address the glaring holes in your squad first. You just bought a striker. You just bought a center back. Don't go and say, we got to, keep addressing the same 2 areas. Like, go address the other needs and then say, okay, now let's bring in the striker, because Haaland's not leaving. So people do, we hear the notion of, they should sell Martial and then use that money for Haaland. Haaland's going to cost about 5 times as much money as Martial, or sell Pogba and buy Erling Haaland. Again, Haaland's going to cost about 5 times as much as Paul Pogba. And if you sell Paul Pogba, you also need to replace Paul Pogba. But the big thing is who's buying Anthony Martial? United aren't going to get $35 million for him. No one's paying that for Martial. Martial is an inconsistent striker who scored 20 goals last season after not doing much the year before, after a good half season the year before that, after a terrible season the year before that. So at best, he's in this pattern of I'm good, I'm bad, I'm good, I'm bad, I'm really good, and now I'm really bad. You're going to pay $35 million for that? People keep saying $50 million. United didn't even pay $50 million for him. They only ended up paying like 42 because the clauses didn't actually kick in. But
Ballon d'Or, I think one of the clauses.
Ballon d'Or, he had to. The only clause that he got was he scored 25 goals. He had to make a certain number of caps for France. He didn't get those, and he had to win the Ballon d'Or. So they only ended up paying like $42 million pounds. No one's paying 35 for Martial. And Martial just signed a new, nice, lucrative contract. Why would he leave? And here's the big one. Aside from PSG,
I was thinking that as well. I was thinking that I'm good, I'm bad. I like that. Yeah, it's good. Carry on, mate.
So aside from PSG, does anyone outside the UK have money? First of all, nobody in the UK has money. Liverpool don't have money. Chelsea have money, but they spent it all last summer, so now they've just got a reasonable amount of money. Tottenham don't have money, and they're about to spend all that money on the compensation package for Jose Mourinho. Who else is out there? Everton or whatever. And why would he go to Everton? They've got Dominic Calvert-Lewin. He actually scores goals. They have Richarlison. That's a great partnership. They're not interested in Anthony Martial. Manchester City have money. They're not interested in Anthony Martial. He's not good enough on current form to play for them. But then the greatest trick that PSG ever pulled was convincing the world that they have all this money. PSG are a much more financially responsible club than anyone gives them credit for. In the last 3 years, which includes this past year where United did what some would describe as fuck all in the transfer market. And 2 years ago what they did was
you didn't hear that. Hopefully, carry on.
What 2 years ago when they signed Fred and Dalot, and that was their business. So in those 3 years, United have a higher net spend than PSG. And that includes PSG paying money for Mbappe. And in the last 4 years, which includes PSG spending money for Mbappe and Neymar, they have spent about 40 million pounds more than United. They are not the drunken sailors that people make them out to be. And they are certainly not, will take bad contracts off your hands, people. Yeah. They spend really smartly. They spend it on young players. They spend it on guys that they can develop. They spend it on guys that they're the days of, oh, this player didn't work out for us, we'll give him a shot, is over. Teams aren't going to take bad contracts off their hands.
Look, Moise Keane on loan from Everton, really shrewd bit of business, Paulie. I think he scored 13 goals in 20-odd games for PSG. So obviously,
but they took him on loan. On loan. He's a young guy. There was no risk.
Yeah.
And I saw this yesterday in a piece by Miguel Delaney, who, when he's talking about United, you could take anything he says with a grain of salt. He's kind of a dipshit. But this was about City, and it was actually interesting. And here's what he said when PSG went for Neymar. Part of the strategy behind the sheer magnitude of the deal was if they drove up the fees and wages to a certain level, there would only be a certain number of clubs capable of competing. And the interesting part was among them are the two Manchester clubs, Chelsea, but the two big Spanish clubs, Real Madrid and Barcelona, were not seen as part of that group. And that's not surprising. All you had to do was take a look at their finance sheets, and you knew they were a house of cards that was going to collapse.
Barcelona tried to join that party, Paulie, when they signed Coutinho for 160 million. But
that was exactly what it was.
Shot themselves in the foot. Yeah.
But that's exactly what it was. Is basically PSG knew there would be a residual effect here, a ripple effect, and that we're giving Barcelona 238 million. But that means everybody knows Barcelona has 238 million. So when they wanted Ousmane Dembele and when they wanted Coutinho, Liverpool and Borussia Dortmund said, we want that Neymar money. And then suddenly Coutinho became an 120 million euro player, and Dembele became 120 million pounds. And what happened next? Southampton goes, well, you got that Coutinho money when Liverpool wanted Van Dijk, so we want some of that money. And then Van Dijk becomes 75 million, and that becomes the record. And when Leicester are sitting there,
it becomes 80 million.
When Leicester are sitting there with a defender who has 4 years left on his contract and they don't need money, and they go, you want him? You got to set a new record. And that becomes 80 million. And suddenly everybody's price has jumped by 4x. And that's exactly what PSG knew would happen. And they went, and the only clubs that will be able to compete at the top are going to be, there's going to be 4 or 5 clubs. Juventus can't do it. They have no money. Barcelona's issue was they were never the type of team that went and spent like crazy. They got their success behind a homegrown generation that they supplemented very well. And then they tried to keep that going. And they basically said, well, we need to spend a lot of money to keep it here. And now that team has gotten old and had to be moved on, and they don't have any money left because they've never been a team that brings in a lot of money or that can sustain that kind of spending. And now they're almost bankrupt. And Real Madrid, the laws in Spain have changed over the last 10 years. and they're not making as much. They used to have Real Madrid and Barcelona used to make all their money off TV because they got their own contracts. They don't have that anymore. And there's more salary cap laws in Spain with La Liga. Like, they don't have the power or the financial backing that they used to. If you look at Real Madrid and what they've spent in recent years, the only summer where they went on a huge spending spree was when they were sitting on a pile of Ronaldo money. And then they went and spent that. But all the other years, they sat and were pretty quiet in the windows. So there are no teams in Europe that have money. So if Martial gets, here's the thing: United may say, Martial, you're not the number one anymore, but they wouldn't look to. First of all, Joel Glazer loves Martial, so he's not going to let them sell him anyway. But there's no need to sell him because you still need him. Cavani is old and has already been injured 3 times this year. So you can't rely on him to be your number one striker. Marcus Rashford, we always think is he's one day away from breaking down. So you need that backup, someone that can play there. You want to have 5 guys that could start across the front 3. 6, even better, especially, so that you could rotate properly and well. So Martial is a very useful player to United. The only way he'd be leaving is if he said, I'm not getting any playing time and I want playing time. But then it comes down to, where are you going to go to get it? Are they going to give you the money? And the ideal thing that fans still have in their head, oh, he'll leave because of playing time and he wants first team football, is a romantic notion that and an idealistic notion that we have in our head. But over the last 3-4 years, players have time and time again proven, no, like, we're not going to end up taking less money. We will see, why is Dele Alli still at Tottenham? They won't make it as easy as you think they will.
No, I know. And Paulie, to be fair as well, I think this is a really good point that coming from Laim, who said that PSG spend in France, football profit in France is different to England. And it's a really good point because, look, there's a lot of talk at the moment that clubs around Europe, especially in England, will be looking to take advantage of the situation in France. There's a big money drop happened over there due to another TV deal, like you were saying, in Spain falling through. A lot of the young French talent at the moment is being touted to go around Europe. But let's be honest, if PSG are smart and they want these players, they'll probably get them because they can offer them big money that they can say that you can stay in the country as well.
And they could. But their whole thing has been they go after players that are 20 to 23 years old. They don't spend big money on older players anymore. Martial's 25.
Yeah.
And look, I know that the popular conception, the common conception is you hit your prime from like 28 to 31, 32. Those are your best years. Yeah. Attacking players hit their peak at 26. So if Martial follows the trend that basically every other footballer follows, is next year or the year after is going to be his best season of his career.
Yeah, no, I agree, Paulie. Absolutely spot on. Thank you as always for your insight, Paulie. Thank you to everyone that's joined in today. We had some great comments from you. Enjoyed your feedback, enjoyed your questions. Paulie, we're usually on Thursday. United kick off at 8 o'clock English time on Thursday. Will there be a pre-match warm-up with an happy hour or not? Do we know
Probably
yet?
not, because the Europa League I want to watch the Europa League. The Europa League is fun. Look, I can understand.
It doesn't clash with the Europa League, but I know you have to get to the bar, so I don't know what your timings are like.
But I want to watch the other games in Europe. Look, I can understand why you don't like your team in the Europa League, especially like if you're a United fan or a Tottenham fan or something, because you're just better than all these teams. But what has happened is as the big four in England has expanded to the big six, and in Germany the same thing has happened, and in Italy the same thing has happened. We're getting a lot better teams in the Europa League, but also we're getting all the small teams. Like, nobody cares, because nobody's going to remember these guys anyway. So there's no like, hey, let's be pragmatic and play a cagey affair and try to nick that away. Everybody in the Europa League just shows up and plays to win, and it's fantastic. It is fun football.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I looked at the draw the other day, Paulie, and I think that Europa League competition is wide open this year, but wide open in the sense that there is some fantastic teams, and actually
there's a lot of players that but you haven't thought of them in 3 years. So like, it's great to be, that guy still exists. But it's two teams that are not at the top, but at the next level and they just go for it. It's wide open. It's fun. I can understand why you don't want your team to play in the Europa League, but let's not throw salt on the even if United were in the Champions League, like you should still be watching the Europa League on Thursday nights. It is fun football.
Strangely as well, I think United are the only team remaining out of the 32 that are in it that have previously won it before, Paulie, under its guise as the Europa League. So there's every chance that we may see a new winner, or there's every chance that United might go and do it again. So yeah, why not? I'm looking. I really enjoyed. I thought last Thursday, Paulie, was one of their best performances in a long time, and I do enjoy watching United in Europe because I do feel that they enjoy the space that they get there compared to what they get in the Premier League. And this team's a good team to watch when you give them space. So anyway, we will leave it there, Paul. Like I say, we'll wrap up. We won't see you on Thursday, but we'll definitely see you next Tuesday for the next United Happy Hour. Until then, take care, guys. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week.